Alcohol Concern's been around as an organisation since the mid-1980s, and I think a lot of our focus initially was on alcohol treatment services for people with very serious and obvious alcohol problems. And I think our focus has really broadened over the last sort of 25, 30 years. Well, alcohol use is obviously very normal in Welsh society. Most of us drink. Most of us are probably drinking more than we should do, and it's very much part of a normal, very traditional social life in Wales to use alcohol. But I think the thing we need to remember is that alcohol is also a poison. It's also an addictive drug, and so it does have to be managed carefully. I don't think we're ever going to change from being a drinking society and alcohol using society, but that does have certain consequences, and we see those consequences in the most obvious forms in places like St Mary Street on a Saturday night, where you can see the sort of the devastation. You would see the mess, the fights, and people being sick on the pavement. But there's also a longer term impact that we don't tend to see. I mean, one thing we need to remember is that around 50% of the alcohol that's sold in this country is bought in the supermarkets, and around 50% of people say they only ever drink at home. And these are people who often think of themselves as quite sensible, moderate drinkers. They buy their nice 3 bottles of wine for a tenner from the supermarket, drink it at home, never get in trouble with the police. But unfortunately, these are the sort of people who are likely to be showing up in later life, perhaps in their 50s and 60s, in liver units, in cancer units. What we're saying to people is not that they should give up alcohol forever, but simply that they should take a pause and really consider their own drinking. And we're not targeting people here who think that they've got a real problem with alcohol. It's not really aimed at people like that at all. It's aimed at people who perhaps just consider themselves as normal, sensible, social drinkers. And what we really like to do is challenge people to see whether they can manage without the booze for a month. And I think people might find it quite interesting, just in terms of looking at their own drinking habits and also at their own social lives. I mean, one issue that's come up now and again, one question that's been raised is, what's it going to be like going out during January when you're sober, especially if all your mates are drinking as well? Gives you quite an interesting perspective on your social life. It's obviously an opportunity to save a bit of money as well if you're spending less on booze, and hopefully improve your health as well. I mean, we're not expecting to see like massive differences in just 31 days, but hopefully people will feel a bit better. Certainly if they're not going out on a Saturday night and really overdoing it, people perhaps feel a bit fresher on Sunday morning, maybe enjoy most of the weekend. It's interesting, there's always been quite a close relationship between sport and alcohol, and I think certainly in Wales, where rugby in particular and heavy drinking around the game really go hand in hand amongst spectators prior to the game, during the game, after the game, celebrating or commiserating, and also certainly below the elite level amongst players. Rugby clubs are quite common drinking venues, and there is this idea really that alcohol and sport go together quite well, and I think that's something that the alcohol industry would be quite keen to encourage by sponsoring big sporting events, sponsoring popular teams. But it's an odd relationship really, because if you speak to people who play sport, even at the most local level, they're quite aware that even a few drinks the night before a match can really undermine your performance. And if you look at elite sportsmen, most of them well, they stay off the booze often for quite long periods in order to keep their performance at the top level.